a minute. So many questions. Somebody wants to know, is it true that I'm doing a voice in the Transformers movie? Yes. The voice of Sentinel Prime. Somebody wants to know about the next Star Trek movie. Who's that? Yeah, there you go. I understand they will begin filming later this year. That's all I know at the moment. Oh, whoa, this is a tough one. Here it comes. Somebody wants to know, is it true that William Shatner tried to drown me? I don't know. I know he threw me in the water when we were making Star Trek 4, and I was wearing a terrycloth robe, which quickly collected about 30 pounds of water. I sank to the bottom of the tank. I didn't see Bill Shatner come down to help me. I had to get that rope off before I could swim back to the top. And he never said, are you okay? He seemed kind of disappointed. So I don't know. He tried to drown me, I don't know. He threw me in the water, I don't know. My parents came to the United States as immigrants. They came as aliens and they became citizens. I was born in Boston, a citizen. I went to Hollywood, I became an alien. And I'm going to show you some, well, first let me, look, I'm going to tell you some stories. Some of you may have heard some of these. None of you have heard all of these. And I'm going to show you some pictures, probably many of which you haven't seen. So I hope you'll find this interesting. When the show went on the air, when Star Trek went on the air in 1966, I got a little laryngitis, as you can probably tell. I'm getting over a cold. 1966, the show went on the air. Can you give me a little more volume on this thing? Is that possible? Ah, thank you, that's better. Yeah. Wow, that's fast. Amazing, all right, I like that. Show it on the air, and I have not made any plans to change my life in any way, because I have been acting in films and television for many years, 15 years, really, but never in a character that had this kind of impact on the audience. And I had no idea what that impact was going to be like, or how it would affect my life or the life of my family. And suddenly, I found there were people parked outside the studio gates waiting for me to drive out and following me home. And the next thing I knew, they're tearing off leaves off the shrubbery on my property. How are they going to prove where they got that? You know? You sure this is from Leonard Nimoy? Yes, it is. I tore it off myself. And Spock was a big hit. I had to be ushered in and out of restaurants, in and out of theaters, secret passages, secret entryways, and so forth. It was exciting, but it was a little nerve-wracking. So when I got an offer, an invitation, to go to speak at a college in Billings, Montana, I decided that I would go because it would probably be very nice and quiet there. And I like talking to students, I really do. So I thought, this is a good getaway for me. This is what I'm going to do. So I flew to Billings, and I was picked up at the airport and taken to a local motel where they checked me in. And I hadn't been in the room in more than 3 or 4 minutes. The phone rang. And that was really strange. Who could be calling me? And I picked up the phone and I said hello. And a young female voice started screaming. All kinds of strange noises coming out of her. Is that you? I'm glad I get you on the phone. This is unbelievable. I said, who are you? She said, my name is Mary. I said, "Where are you calling me from?" She said, "Denver." "Denver? How did you find me?" She said, "Well, I heard you were speaking at buildings, and I called all the hotels and motels. There's only 3. So I said, "Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate your interest and your support. Keep watching Star Trek. Live long and prosper. Goodbye," and I hung up. I finished unpacking. 2 or 3 minutes go by, and the phone rings again. I pick it up, I say, "Hello," and another female voice says, "Oh my God, I can't believe I got you on the phone. I got him on the phone, you know." "Who are you?" "My name is Sally." "Sally, where are you calling me from?" "St. Louis." "Sally, how did you find me?" "My friend Mary called me from Denver." Unbelievable. This is the front of the building where I grew up. The lady on the left is my grandmother. And the lady on the right was a neighbor that lived downstairs. We lived on the 3rd floor. This was in Boston, tenement neighborhood. It was torn down in the mid-50s, an urban renewal project. But that's my grandma, who came from Russia around the turn of the century. And this was my gang. You had to have a white shirt to be this gang. That's the one on the left. Good bunch of people. Some of them gone, some still around, some I'm still in touch with. Good bunch of people. We were very active in a settlement house called the Elizabeth Peabody House in Boston. And I was lucky to grow up in Boston. It was a very interesting city. A lot of academia, a lot of theaters, a lot of arts, museums, concert halls, and so forth. So I was exposed to a lot of that when I was a kid, which was very good for me. And when I was about 8 years old, I started hanging out at this place after school and on weekends. Peabody House had a sports program, and they had a science program. They had classes. The building was designed to serve the immigrants in the neighborhood. The neighborhood was all immigrant people, around the turn of the century. And they had classes in how to sew, how to cook, how to keep a sanitary kitchen, how to do your laundry properly. Classes in English, because a lot of the people didn't speak English. They spoke a lot of Italian, a lot of Jewish people. And they also had a beautiful theater. And I started acting in that theater when I was about 8 years old, doing children's plays, and I continued to do that until when I was about 17, I was cast in a play with some very good actors, not professional, we weren't paid. It was still amateur work, but it was a very interesting and rather important play called Awake and Sing. This play had been performed on Broadway a few years earlier, and it was about a family very much like my own. It was about a Jewish family in the Bronx in New York, with 3 generations living in an apartment together, the grandparents, parents, and children. And that's the way I lived with my grandparents and my parents and my brother and I. 6 of us in a 2-bedroom apartment, 3 generations. And what was exciting for me, it was the first time I was doing an adult play. It was no longer children's theater, it was an adult play. And I was playing the juvenile, the 17-year-old kid in his family, and I was 17 at the time, almost 18. So I really identified with his character. This kid in his family was trying to figure out how to live his life, what his life is supposed to be about. How do you find the right job for yourself? How do you find the right girl for yourself? How do you find out who you're supposed to be in the world? And the pressures from parents and all that kind of stuff that kids go through at that age. And I was going through it. And I thought, wow, this is really, it's about me, it's about people. It's about real flesh and blood people. And if I could do this kind of work, and it'll help to illuminate people's lives for an audience, this would be a great way to spend your life. It would be a blessing if I could do this and make a living at it. So that's when I decided to be an actor. So I went home and I said to my folks, guess what? This is what I want to do with my life. Well, my parents were Russian immigrants. They didn't leave Russia and in danger of their lives and come to the United States for their kid to become an actor. Their hope was, I have a brother who's 4.5 years older than me. He had a wonderful career as a chemical engineer. And he was really, his brain works different than mine. He's a scientist, he's a real scientist. And he had a wonderful career in science. I wasn't interested in doing that, believe me. Don't believe anything about Spock and me. It's just, that wasn't really me. Anyway, they thought that our lives should be about getting a proper education and being able to make a secure living, be a doctor, a lawyer, an engineer, any of the sciences, a dentist, a pharmacist, a teacher, anything that would be a secure profession. I want to be an actor. So my dad said, he was a sweet, hard-working man who was a barber all his life. Not a stylist, didn't have a hair salon, he was a barber. He cut hair, that's what he did. He cut hair for about 65 years of his life. And he was very unsophisticated. And he said to me, what did I do? Did I just punch a button?
Yeah, two.
Oh, I'm sorry about that. I'm getting ahead of myself. Okay. You are getting a computer? Back up. Back up. Unbelievable. We can't control the technology. We can't control it. It's taking over our lives. Anyway, my dad was a very unsophisticated man. When I told him I wanted to be an actor, he said, you'll be hanging around with gypsies and vagabonds.
Here we are.
It sounded kind of interesting to me, actually. And then he gave me the only advice that my dad, really, the only advice he ever gave me. He said, learn to play the accordion. You can always make a living with an accordion. I didn't take my dad's advice. The last movie that I saw before I left Boston was Shakespeare's Henry V, starring Laurence Olivier and directed by Olivier. Olivier was considered the greatest actor of his generation. And the theater where I did Awake and Sing there was a beautiful curtain. It was an embroidered curtain that was a forest scene on a cloth. And at the bottom of the curtain, it said, act well your part, there all honor lies. And it made a big impression on me. I thought, well, you gotta take this seriously. It's an art form, you gotta take art seriously in order to do honorable work. And then I go to see this movie, Henry V with Olivier, and there comes a point of the movie, in the story, when he's the King of England, and his troops tomorrow morning are going to fight the French at the Battle of Agincourt. And they're vastly outnumbered by the French. The French have a lot more people, a lot more men in their ranks. So the English are looking like they're going to take a beating. And King Henry goes out at night wearing a hood, just like Spock in Star Trek 3, actually. And he's disguised. He wants to know what his troops are thinking. So he goes out in the night to listen to what people are talking about, and he hears somebody say that they wish they had more men. And he says, what's he that wishes so? My cousin, Westmoreland? Nay, cuz, wish not a single man more. If we are marked to die, we are now to do our country loss. But if to live, the fewer men, the greater share of honor. Whoa. There's that word again. Then he goes on to say, by Jove, I am not covetous for gold, nor care I who doth feed upon my cost. It yearns me not if men my garments wear, such outward things dwell not in my desires. But if it be a sin to covet honor, I am the most offending soul alive. And I got chilled listening to him say that. I've got to read something going on here with this word. I've got to pay attention. And that was the last film I saw. I got on a train and left Boston to go to California. And I went to that great citadel of honor known as Hollywood. I got off the train. I moved into a rooming house where I share a room with 3 other guys, and we each paid $6 a week. I got a job in an ice cream shop. I got my 8x10 glossy photographs, and I started knocking on doors of the agencies up and down Sunset Boulevard. And they weren't too very long. It wasn't really, maybe within a year, I found myself on a sound stage acting in a film. I thought, wow, here I am. Not so bad. I've got the costume, I've got the makeup, there's the camera, there's the sound crew, there's the actors and the set, and here we are, we're making a movie. And I thought, oh, this is a great start. And to this day, I can't imagine why that job didn't propel me into stardom. It was a great project called Zombies of the Stratosphere. There we are. 3 of us came to Earth in a ship that staggered across the screen, behind a trail of smoke. We landed, we stole a pickup truck and a couple of Colt 45 revolvers and announced we're going to take over Earth. There he is. Your favorite zombie. That's me. It is, it's me. Does it look like me? No?
Yes.
Who said yeah?
Good job.
Have you seen it?
Yeah, good job.
You've seen Zombies of the Stratosphere? Amazing.
Because it was your first movie.
Oh, amazing, amazing. That was followed by another great hit called Attack of the Brain Eaters. I don't have a picture for that one, I'm sorry. My career looked like it was swirling down the drain hole very fast. And I went to work doing various jobs to support myself. I sold life insurance, I sold freezers, I worked in a pet shop, I did all kinds of stuff. And then I got a job that lasted 2 years, a 2-year job in the United States Army. And I'm standing in front of a desk, there's a corporal sitting behind the desk, he's got a typewriter, and he says to me, what do you do in civilian life? I said, I'm an actor. Oh, yeah, really? Yeah, I'm an actor, yeah. What have I seen you in? Zombies of the Stratosphere? Infantry. I spent 2 years in the Army. And I came out, when I came out, I was married, I had a child, and another one on the way. I was kind of busy. And I took a job at night. I had to work nights so I could, during the day, I could go out on auditions and interviews for acting work. And one night, I got a call to go to the Bel Air Hotel to pick up Mr. Kennedy. So, being from Boston, the Kennedy name meant something to me. And this was in 1956, you got to understand, hardly anybody knew him outside of Massachusetts because he had not yet had any national attention. So I went to the Bel Air Hotel and I asked for Mr. Kennedy. Doorman made a call, he said, he'll be out in a minute. And sure enough, here came Jack Kennedy walking out of the hotel. And later that year, he spoke at the Democratic Convention, did a major speech, and he suddenly started to become a national figure. But this was early in '56. And he got in a cab, and he asked me to take him to the Beverly Hilton Hotel, which was a very short ride. And I said, how are things in Massachusetts, Senator? And he lit up. He was excited that somebody recognized him in California. And he said, are you from Massachusetts? I said, yes. He said, what part? I said, Boston, the inner city, West End. He said, I know the area well, which of course I knew he did because his office on Beacon Hill was just about 3 or 4 blocks distance from where I grew up. So he said, what are you doing out here? Well, here I am, drunk and drunk. I said, I'm an actor. And he said, a lot of competition in your business. And I said, yes. And he said, well, just the same as mine, you know. And then he said something to me that saw me through a lot of tough times. He said, always keep in mind, there's room for one more good one. So I said, thank you very much, that helps. And it did, because I dedicated myself to trying to be a good one. Not just an actor, but to be a good one, to really learn the craft. And I studied and I worked hard at it. But I'll never forget that night. And then gradually I began to learn my way, how to go about building a career as an actor. I was interviewed at Republic Studios, and producer said to me, "Do you ride?" I said, "No," he said, "not drive, do you ride horses?" I had never been on a horse. So I said, "No, well, that's a big mistake, and all you do learn very fast. Whatever they ask you to do, you say, oh, I can do that, sure." Could you drop 100 feet off the back of an ocean liner and fight a shark and get back on the boat? Of course. I've done that several times, yeah. So, you always say, yes, I can do that, I can do that. And I went out and I learned how to ride, and then I did a bunch of westerns, among other things. I did Gunsmoke and Wagon Train and Bonanza and Rawhide with Clint Eastwood. I did all those western shows. As a matter of fact, here we go. That's the Army. That's me in the Army, hi. I played a lot of Indians. I played Indian roles that Indians wouldn't play. There's Bill Shatner acting like a cowboy, and Jimmy Doohan a laughing Indian, and DeForest Kelly, God bless him. The only one who looks authentic in this picture to me is Pete Kelly. The rest of us look like we're faking it. Anyway, I did a lot of westerns, and a lot of other stuff. And the work was hard. It was intense. I was there 12 hours every day. I was in the makeup chair at 6:30 in the morning. I left at 6:30 at night. And I went home and studied lines, had a fast meal, went to sleep, up at 5:30 in the morning to be to work at 6:30 again the next day. And often traveling all over the country doing promotion appearances on the weekends. So it was hard, it was intense. And, well, we loved it. We loved it. It was what we wanted to do with our lives. Sometimes it was fun, yeah. And it was very creative. I really thought, this is what I've been waiting for. This is the chance to show what I've learned all these years in my training and my experience. I've got to bring to this job whatever I can possibly bring to it beyond what the writers give me. The writers give me some wonderful stuff. But you've got to bring something to the party. You can't just stand there and say the lines. So, for example, we were doing an episode, I think it was called The Enemy Within, where the Kirk character was split into two personalities by a malfunction in the transporter. Transporter comes up and out comes this kind of scaredy little guy called Kirk. And then the transporter comes up again and another Kirk comes out, this kind of mean, snarly Kirk. So he's been split into two. This is our version of the Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde story. And we come to a scene in the script where the bad Kirk has got his gun pointed at the good Kirk and he's going to kill him. If he does that, we will never get Humpty Dumpty back together again. So we can't let that happen. So the writer had written that Spock takes his phaser and hits the bad Kirk over the head with the butt of his phaser to knock him out. So I said to the director, wait, that's not appropriate. Not appropriate. So what do you have in mind? I said, well, Spock is a graduate of the Vulcan Institute of Technology. and he took courses in human anatomy. And Vulcans have an energy that comes off their fingertips, which if it's applied to the appropriate pressure point on a human, will render a human unconscious. Oh, really? I'll show you how this works. And I told Bill what I was going to do. I came up behind him, and I put that pinch on his neck, and Bill dropped to the floor. And that's how the Vulcan neck pinch was born. I knew it was popular because people kept asking me to teach them how to do it so they could do it to their kids. second season, we got a script from a wonderful science fiction writer named Theodore Sturgeon. It was really very, very beautiful poetic script. It was called Amok Time. And in that script, the words "live long and prosper" were written and spoken for the first time. And I was particularly excited on my game about this episode because we're going to Vulcan. We're going to see the planet. We're going to see other Vulcans for the first time ever. So I got to really be ready to look for opportunities here and to develop the story of the Vulcan culture. So we land on the planet. Spock has to go home, as you recall, because he's in heat. Happens once every 7 years. And well worth waiting for. It's really quite an event. Anyway, so we land on the planet, and here comes this procession out from the city to greet us, and leading the procession is a lady being carried in a sedan chair, wonderful actress playing this character called T'Pau. The actress is Sita Ilovsky, a Viennese actress. Great dignity, great power in a very quiet way. And they set her down, and I'm supposed to come and say hello. She says, "Welcome home, Spock." And I don't remember what I said. "It's nice to be here," or whatever. I'm not sure what I said exactly. But I said to the director, I think we have to, let's take a minute here. We have to figure out what Vulcans do when they greet each other. He said, "What do you mean?" I said, "Well, humans shake hands, right? Asian people bow to each other. Military people salute each other. What do Vulcans do?" So he said, "Okay, what do you want to do?" So I reached back into my Jewish heritage. When I was a kid, about 8 or 9 years old, I went to the synagogue with my parents, with my family. And I'm sitting in the men's section with my grandfather, my father, and my brother, myself. And there comes a moment in the service where the congregation is blessed by these gentlemen who are known as Kohanim. They are members of the priestly tribe of the Hebrews. And they bless the congregation with a blessing that's in the Old and the New Testament. In English, it's "May the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord cause his countenance to shine upon you. May the Lord turn his graciousness unto you and grant you peace." So these guys get up there, and they're going to do this benediction. My dad says to me, "Don't look." So I snuck a peek. And I see people got their eyes covered with their hands, got their prayer shawls over their heads. And here's these guys up there facing us, and they've got their prayer shawls over their heads. And they're screaming and shouting like a revival meeting. They're in ecstasy, and they're shouting this prayer in Hebrew. And as they're shouting this prayer and their heads are covered, you can imagine the scene. They got their hands out like this over the congregation, like that. And they're shouting this prayer. And I was mesmerized. I thought, wow, this is very cool. Something's going on here. And I started working on being able to do that. I spent years of diligent practice and self-denial to learn how to do it. I could do it any place, right hand, left hand, anytime. I had no idea that it might come in handy someday. I later learned, I didn't know why they were doing it. I later learned this is the shape of a Hebrew letter. The letter is called Shin. It's the first letter in the word Shalom, which means peace in Hebrew. So it's an important letter in the Hebrew language. And many years after that, I learned the reason we cover our eyes and don't look is because the belief is that during that blessing, the Shekhinah also starts with a Shin. The Shekhinah, that's the name of the feminine aspect of God, comes into the sanctuary to bless the congregation. And she's a deity. You don't want to see the light that comes off of her because it could be very damaging to a human. So that's why you cover yourself, to cover your eyes, to protect yourself. Anyway, I said to the director, "How about if Vulcans do this?" He said, "Okay." So we went to Sita Ilovsky and explained to her, "Leonard will do this as he approaches you, and you will return it." And she said, "I can't do that." She had not spent the years of diligent practice. But we managed to get it figured out. She hid her right hand and held it in shape with her left hand. And when I raised my hand, she was ready. She raised hers, and that's how we got it into the show. It was a hit immediately. People started doing that to me on the street. Kids, truck drivers, policemen, waiters in restaurants. Hey, Spock! Hey, Spock! So it took hold, and it was very, very gratifying. This is a photograph of me demonstrating with the prayer shawl what it was that I saw as a kid. And this is the photograph that was taken that day on the set, the day we shot that episode. That's what that photograph is from. I signed some of these earlier this morning. It's still a very, very popular photograph. It's the first time that gesture was introduced in historic fact. This is my son and I. He was visiting me on the set that day, and the makeup department took him in, unbeknownst to me, and they put ears on it. And he came out on the bridge. He's a great guy. He's teaching acting and directing in Los Angeles. His name is Adam, and he's a wonderful son. So we were off and running. We were doing the show, and shortly after the show went on the air, the fan mail became a problem. It started out with they brought me a little batch and said, "You got some fan letters." "Oh, terrific, okay. I'll answer those." And I sat down and wrote thank you notes and signed photographs and sent them off in the mail. And then a stack like that came and I thought, "Oh, well, okay, I'll do it during lunch while I'm having a sandwich. I'll do that." And then it was impossible. It came in sacks. I mean, seriously, big sacks of mail were coming regularly, and I couldn't take care of it myself. So I asked the studio if they would help me with the postage and the photographs that all were getting costly. I said, "Will you give me some help with this? Because after all, it supports the show too." So they said, "Okay." And then I got this letter from the management. They said, "Dear Leonard, for the past several weeks we've been consulted with respect to the operation in regard to your personally handling your fan mail. I have iterated myself many times with regards to the agreement that I made with respect to our obligations to you in this connection. For purposes of clarification, we would like to iterate the agreement that was made. In addition to your compensation, we agreed to pay you $100 toward your secretary and equipment needs for your personally handling the fan mail. That's $100 per episode. It is not intended, nor was it specifically agreed, that we would furnish you with pens, pencils, etc., which we assumed you would furnish yourself." So the next day I sent back, I think a memo like that calls for an answer. The next day I sent back a memo and I said, "Dear Ed, thank you very much for taking the time to send me your memo clarifying our agreement as regards to fan mail supplies, etc. I hasten to assure you that we will no longer need to make requests in this area for some time, since my secretary and I have gone to various offices around the studio and we have managed to steal all the pens and pencils." The third season was difficult. The third season was tough. We had new producers, we had new writers, and they didn't get it as well as the earlier people had. And it was a tough time. We had an occasional good show, but the quality was not, generally was not good. It was not good. I was asked on a weekend, on a Friday, they came to me and said, "We're doing an episode next week where you have to sing a song. And do you have an idea of what you would do?" And I said, "Well, no." "Do you have a song?" They said, "No." "Can you come up with something?" So I said, "Oh, I'll try." So over the weekend, I wrote a song called Maiden Wine, and I later recorded it, but I did do this, I wrote this song over a weekend. And I'll tell you, I won't try to sing it because I haven't got the words, but it went something like this. "Take care, young ladies, and value your wine. Be watchful of young men in their velvet prime. Deeply they'll swallow from your finest kegs, then swiftly be gone, leaving bitter dregs. Your time hold precious, For youth is your gold. Your beauty like silver will tarnish when old. Memories and dreams shall comfort you not when the flow of your sweetness is gone and forgot. With smiling words and tender touch, man offers little and asks for so much. He loves in the breathless excitement of night, then leaves with your treasure in cold morning light. That was called Maiden Wine. I sang that in an episode called The episode was called Plato's Stepchildren. Look it up. Then the show was canceled. Not because of Maiden Wine. The show was canceled. And I was kind of relieved. I thought, you know, I don't want to run this thing into the ground. If it's not going to get better, let's not do it. If it's not going to at least hold its level of quality, let's not do it. Because we did some wonderful stuff. I was very proud of what we did. If we can't maintain that quality, let's not do it. And the show was canceled. And I was cast in Mission Impossible immediately. And I spent the rest of the years. There I am with Leslie Ann Warren, thank you. And well, as a kid, I always wanted to be a magician. I got to play a magician in Mission Impossible. This was an episode called The Vulcan. It was interesting for a while. I was playing European dictators, Asian dictators, South American dictators. Then after a while, they came around again, the European dictators, South American. I thought, no. And there was no interior life in these characters. It was all charades. So it was kind of superficial acting, but nothing that you could really sink your teeth into. At the end of 2 years, I asked them to let me out. And they did. And I really considered at that point changing careers. I had always loved photography ever since I was a teenager. And I really considered changing my life. I thought, well, I've had 5 years of television and a lot of success and financial security. I don't have to do this anymore if I don't want to. Probably won't make enough money to support my family even without pursuing an acting career. I should look into photography. So I went to school at UCLA to study seriously. And I quickly realized that I did not want to do commercial photography. I didn't want to do fashion photography. I didn't want to do cosmetics and cars. And that's what commercial photography is all about, to do stuff for the magazines and newspapers and so forth. I want to do what's known as fine art photography, conceptual photography. Translated, that means you cannot make a living at it. You know? Okay, I'll stick to the acting, but I started carrying cameras everywhere I went. This was a photograph that I did of my parents, which is really amazingly, I didn't realize at the moment, but I looked at it after and I thought, wow, that really tells the story of what they were about. My mother was a very curious person. She would stop and look through the windows and see what's on the other side. My dad just kept right on walking. And this is a self-portrait that I did that's now in the permanent collection in the Los Angeles County Museum. I'm very proud of that one. And then I went to Spain to act in a Western with Yul Brynner, maybe the last of the big Westerns. It was called Cat Love. It was a kind of a funny movie. And intentionally funny. It was a tongue-in-cheek Western. And this is what I looked like as the bad guy in Cat Love with Yul Brynner. This is me on the set with Sam Waterman, the director. That's me on the right. We were shooting in. How many? What? They're gonna throw me out of here.
You know what we can do with her.
You're wearing the red shirt, get the red shirt. We were shooting that movie in Spain, the southern coast of Spain. So I was wandering around on days off with my camera, and I found stuff like this to photograph, and this. And I came back from Spain, and I went on tour in a production of Fiddler on the Roof on the East Coast. Had a great time, wonderful time doing that. And then I went to Israel, and I played Golda Meir's husband in this movie with Ingrid Bergman. She played Golda Meir, I played her husband. One of the great thrills of my life. Ingrid Bergman, one of the greatest film actresses, Academy Award winner, Casablanca, my favorite movie of all time, that we were acting together. And this was in Invasion of the Body Snatchers. With Donald Sutherland and Jeff Goldblum. This was in Morocco, where I played the prophet Samuel anointing the young King David. Exciting project. 1977, I was on Broadway acting in Equus, and I heard about this fantastic new movie that had just opened. It was getting gigantic reviews and gigantic box office. It was called Star Wars. George Lucas did us a big favor, because for several years there had been no Star Trek production. And during that period of time, I published, I think, a very interesting book about Star Trek called I Am Not Spock. I made a mistake, okay? Please forgive me. I should not have titled the book I'm Not Spock. I should have called it I Love Spock. I thought it was an interesting title. I wrote it because, I used that title because there was a chapter in the book that explained the differences between me and Spock. It was my effort to help an audience understand how an actor goes about building a character. Anyway, it was a mistake. I should have used it. People got very angry. They thought there was no Star Trek. The rumor was out that there's no Star Trek because Nimoy won't play Spock. It wasn't true at all. Not at all. And then George Lucas did this fantastic movie. We did great business. I went to see it in this packed movie house in New York, and people screaming and cheering, and I thought, whoa, boy, I'm going to be getting a call from Paramount pretty soon. And sure enough, they called, and we went to work and made the Star Trek movie.